Hello and welcome back to the channel and this video. I'm very excited to be able to bring you this gameplay of what I feel is the best settings in Halo Infinite at the moment if you've got a 3070 card, and actually if you've got a CPU i9 10850K. Now I know I've just whizzed through the settings there. I am going to just talk about some of the key ones as the gameplay is showing. As you can see, I've got the overlay running there, so you can see the temperature of the GPU, CPU, as well as how much being used, and of course the frames per second, which is the most, I guess, important bit. So I'm also going to show you the settings at the end of the video, so if you annoyed that I've gone through them so quickly there at the start of the match, it's just the easiest way to get this video out and to test the different settings. I have been playing this game an awful lot since it's released. I missed it the first couple of days as they dropped it out of the blue, but I played it for about 7 hours now over the last 2 days, which is pretty good going for me, especially when you consider working full-time and it not being the weekend. Anyway, as the gameplay runs there, and this is a pretty good match, a good one to test out these settings, because although it's 4v4, I've only really been playing 4v4 and not doing big team battles. This is probably the biggest map and therefore one of the hardest ones to test out these settings on, because there's a lot more, the computer has to render and process, and a lot more that's going on at any given time, but also there's some lulls. So at the moment you can see it's fairly high there. Through some corridors actually it peaks at 165 frames per second when nothing's happening. Obviously there are some lows here, as you can see, still hitting about 130, 125. Sometimes it does dip well under that for a fraction of a second, but really couldn't feel any dips. It felt smooth the whole way around. Again, it's going to depend on your monitor as well. But anyway, I just want to go back. I'm not going to do anything to the video, but I do want to, and I'm also not going to talk over this whole video. I just want to highlight some of the key ones, and feel free to play and experiment. Every map that you play on, you're going to get away with different settings. That's what I sort of was trying to say earlier. This is a good benchmark for probably the hardest settings that you could find on a 4v4 game, because of the map type. So the performance you're seeing here is actually going to be a lot better on most of the other 4v4 maps, because they're smaller and more confined. So bear that in mind. I've tested this. I've tested a lot of settings, and I've tested 1080p, and I've tested 4K as well, all with this setup, and I'm pretty happy. I think this is my optimal choice for settings, and what I'm probably going to stick with. The key things here, and the only thing that you might want to change if you're playing on some of those smaller maps, is the texture quality. That is the kind of biggest asset out of all of the different graphics settings that you can choose from. That takes up the most VRAM and is obviously displaying the most data, so that's the one to consider. You might want to bump that up to ultra. For me, with the 3070, especially if you're playing big team battles, you really want to lock it into high when you're on 1440p, or certainly if you're on 4K. If you're running 1080p monitor, there's no point rendering really at 1440p. You might as well render at 1080 and get even more frames per second, and there you could bump the texture quality up to ultra. Outside of that though, leave it at high, and maybe just play and experiment, see how you feel. I personally think high and ultra doesn't have that much in between them. Very slight noticeable tweaks and different aspects here and there if you are jumping back and forth, but if you're just playing on high, you're not really going to notice it. The other things that I've gone for, there is a lot of lighting effects and a lot of reflections in most of these maps. They've really done a great job in visually designing these. However, reflections I found were quite a big impact on gameplay and on performance, so I've turned them off. That's a key one that I've decided to get rid of. Not even wanted it on low. Sometimes you can put them on low and get better performance, but they look a bit suspect, so I prefer to just have them off, and then it's not sort of an eyesore either. You can get away with maybe trying medium and seeing if you like that, but personally I've had them on low. Everything else is for the most part on high. There's a couple of things I put on ultra to try and make up for the main textures being on high. Geometry quality, I've gone for ultra on that, just to again try and bump up a bit, make it a bit smoother, a bit nicer on some of the geometry, some of the objects and some of the pop in that happens. So the gameplay kind of runs a bit slicker and a bit smoother when you're looking further ahead. And also two of the key ones are the terrain quality. You really want that on ultra because again that's everything around you, even though it's not the big objects, it's the trees, the bushes. Obviously you can't really see that on this map, but I believe it's also some of the objects on this map, so the computers and the boxes and the fire extinguishers, things like that. So have that on ultra. You can get away with that on ultra if you've got the main texture pack down on high. Simulation quality, also set that to ultra, and that's kind of the main settings really. Oh, one other thing, actually, I've jumped a bit too far ahead of the settings. Before you go on to the individual settings, one key thing, absolutely critical, is that you run the game in where it says maximum frame rate. You have that as unlocked. I was just having it up to the maximum my monitor could output, which is 165. I just went with that because I thought it would give it a nice locked cap to work with, but it actually limited my CPU. For some reason my CPU was only running at 20%, and when I put that to unlocked, alright, the CPU did get about 5 degrees hotter, but it ran closer to 40%, as you can see, and it really made a big difference to the performance. So that's something that you should definitely do, unless your computer's really overheating with it, which I doubt. So yeah, otherwise there's some sensory stuff at the bottom. I've played with that. That's more visual stuff that you might want, you might not. I don't like having the full screen effects where the shields pop up and all that, you know, the blast health and all those things. So I've decreased that down to half, and I've got rid of the speed lines because they look stupid. But outside of that, that's kind of where we are with the gameplay. Hopefully you'll enjoy. There's some really cool shots. I think I did some really good defensive plays, especially in the last little game. So watch it all and tell me what you think. And I'll be doing some a kind of mini review on this release of Halo Infinite multiplayer, which I guess is just the beta at the moment, the final one before the actual release. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and stay tuned, subscribe for more videos coming up. Hopefully I will catch you soon.
Enemy team facing elimination.
And now, the finishing blow. Spike grenades acquired.
Enemy Spartans are closing in. Reload.
They have our flag. Not good. Ammo reserves depleting.
No scope. No scope. Kill. No scope. Flag returned.
In my sights.
kill.
Power items on the way.
Flag return.
Power items on the field.
Seconds remaining. Taking fire.
Grenade out!
10 seconds.